On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1975. We're going to be taking a look at Bay City Rollers, and they're going to be performing Shang-A-Lang. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this performance is around 3 minutes, so we'll watch it all the way through, and it is live. We will get into the analysis afterwards. And there we have it. This is one of those bands in the mid-70s, Bay City Rollers, who were massively successful. And you can see with this performance, they weren't taking any chances and had a barrier really high at the front of the stage. But this is such an interesting video from so many different perspectives, because I'm sure that if you have searched for Bay City Rollers performances on YouTube, it is so difficult to find one that is truly live, because in the mid-70s especially and onwards, TV shows would encourage acts to mime, because the music machine and the media machine really was in full flow, and they realized that if they just pressed play on the record player, then they could get so many bands in after each other rather than setting up the equipment each time. But this video shows them playing live. You can also hear that there is nothing on the microphone. It's such a dry sound, and it's Les McKeown here performing, jumping around, entertaining while singing, and it is something that will affect your breath support if you're moving around quite a lot, especially just your breathing full stop when you are entertaining. But being in a young band, having a young crowd, and the adrenaline's rushing around is one of those things that you do see a lot, especially with standalone lead singers who can cover the stage. It is a case of managing that breath and being able to entertain as well as sing, and Les does a great job here. Something I do want to put under the spotlight is the difference between playing live and playing in the studio, because with this performance we have a plug in and play situation. There's no post-processing going on, whereas in the studio there is a lot that is done to the sound in order to thicken it up before it's then released, and you've got things such as reverb, delay, multi-tracking, so many things that are applied. In this performance, the drums are dry. It is just the acoustic sound of the drums. Something that is always added to drums in the studio is reverb, because it fills in so much space. You'll also notice how this performance is outside, which means that the sound waves are just escaping and getting absorbed by the crowd right in front of the band. If you've ever played or watched a band in an arena, you'll know how the sound goes out from the stage but reverberates within the acoustic space. So you get a lot more filling of that sound from that reverb effectively that's happening naturally. But playing outside, you don't get that advantage. If there aren't a lot of people watching, then it can just be absorbed by them, especially if they are at the same level as the band, which they are here. In an arena, it tends to be the case that the sound goes out into the space and the crowd are lower than the stage, again, adding to that acoustic sound naturally that you can hear, so that when you listen to a drummer drumming in an arena, it's going to sound like it's got reverb on it because of that natural space. The reason that this is so important, if you go back to listening to that original record, you'll notice how the drums on the intro have a reverb effect on them, and that fills in space, it fills in frequency. And as an example, hopefully you guys will be able to hear this. I've just got my MIDI keyboard set up, and we're first of all going to listen to the drums with reverb on them, and then with that reverb taken off, in order to simulate what's happening live compared to the original record. So on the record, we've got this. We've got this bounce from the drums, and it's just the foot pedal and the snare, but you can hear the reverb. It sounds like it's almost being played in a cave, the way that those sound waves seem to be just rebounding everywhere. Now, as soon as I change over to a dry sound, so it means that there's no acoustic space, there's no reverb, it sounds like this. You can hear how, as soon as the snare stops, that's it. There's no space being filled in. It is something that I mentioned in other videos about instruments filling in frequency, which you can also do with effects. For example, reverb and delay, which means that as soon as you finish delivering your vocal, for example, the delay will repeat the line that you've just said, therefore filling in the sound, filling in the frequency. Also, filling in frequency can be a term used for, say for example, somebody playing a guitar riff that is quite high up and then a piano coming in with a lower version of the run. You're filling in frequency and notes, because that's what frequency is. It's a change in note. The higher the frequency, the higher the note will be. I am going to get the guitar out in a second to show you guys what's being played, but also another massive part of the chorus that we're missing in this live performance is the piano, because I'm just going to disappear for a second. We've got this jump from the key, the A that I was playing there with the left hand, the bass notes, and then the chord up at the top, and we're bouncing from the root notes up into the chord, and that is driving throughout the whole chorus on the original record. Unfortunately, we don't have that in this live performance, so it might be something that you would think playing live, maybe we should introduce something with the guitars that is simulating what the piano does on that original record. So just taking you guys through what's being played on the guitar, we've got a really straightforward progression here, just an A, a D, back to the A again, a B. There's also an E thrown in there as well, but those are all the chords you're going to need. And we've got this straight ahead rhythm where we're starting with the A chord and a little bit of palm mute on there as well. It is a classic blues rhythm, and you would expect sometimes to hear that third finger coming in just to supply a little bit of that classic blues riff, but that isn't in there, it's just straight chords. So when we then change over to the D, it's just keeping this rhythm going the whole time. When I was strumming the D chord there, I was still applying that rhythm. So keeping it driving along, but in the performance and on the record, we have the driving forward on the A, and then we change to these stabs. And then we're going to be into the chorus. Now the thing is, that's fine on the record, but with such a dry sound live, it means that there's a lot of space between our chords. I have got a little bit of reverb on my amp, so it's helping me out. And just while I mention that, another thing about when you do record in the studio, if you can use the same equipment that you know you're going to use live, it means that you'll be able to get a similar sound. And the reverb that is helping you out in the studio to fill the sound, you can take that to the live stage because it's part of your setup. It means that it's always going to sound like that rather than relying on a technician, a sound guy, in order to get the sound right for you. Just work on your own sound. Obviously, nowadays with technology, it's a lot easier. So back to the point that I made right at the beginning of the video about playing differently live than you did in the studio, because these guys are obviously playing exactly how they did in the studio, which is exactly what they would have been told to do. And they're performing it really well, nailing all the parts. But sometimes, for example, when we have these stabs, in a live setting, you can have so the reverb that would have filled in the space after the stab you can hear how I'm keeping the rhythm going on the root note of the chord with a palm mute in place. So it's filling in the space that has disappeared because of the lack of processed sound that we have. So then when we do get into the chorus, because the piano isn't in there, we've still got all of the original guitar parts, which are just single strums. And it means that there's going to be a lot of space in there. Something that might have been good, we have got the 2 guitar setup as well, which means that you can start to split the voicings of your chords. I would have probably, if I was performing this, gone as open dynamically as possible for that chorus. So it meant that on the A, I'd have been all in with that rhythm rather than just the single. Something that Alan does on bass here so well is keep it moving forward, because all of the riff work is being played on the bass. Just a lot of rhythm work on the guitars, where I did say you'd expect to hear a little bit of a riff going on, but it is just straight rhythm. When I say about splitting the voicings with the chords, we've got an A down at the bottom here. And you can emphasize the bottom end of that chord like I did, just hitting the root note and the 5th, maybe the octave. And then the same A higher up. And you can start to emphasize the top end of that chord. So you've got the bottom end of the A and the top end of the A ringing out in different positions, different voicings, which will really thicken up that sound. Also, if you wanted to, you could go even higher with it. Even. And take even higher voicings of it, so that when the rhythm's being played down at the bottom, you've got 2 totally different pitches of the same chord going on, which will really thicken up that sound. Another thing to mention is that on the original studio recording, the rhythm that they're playing in the chorus is still going to be this driving forward, and on the mixing desk, they can just boost that up and make it more prominent for the chorus. Whereas live, the dynamics is all in your own playing. You can't run over to your amp and turn up for the chorus and then quickly run over again, turn down for the verse. So it means that when you want to be really open dynamically in that chorus, you can let that rhythm go, but then as soon as you get back into a verse, you then get your palm mute in place and bring everything down manually with your playing and not turning it down on the amp. So for example, we've got this. And I'm back into my rhythm with the palm mute, dynamically bringing it all the way down. Of course, like I said, the problem with this performance with the mix is that when you bring it down to that level, it might disappear altogether because you might have to play all out just to be heard, and that's just a mix problem, that isn't a playing problem. Something else to address is the fact that I think a lot of people, because of the amount of miming that was going on in the 70s by lots of different bands, but Bay City Rollers as well, they assumed that the band couldn't play, but that was far from the truth. I mentioned Alan and Derek earlier. They started up the band and they started playing at school, so it was one of these bands that did start with guys going out and gigging, and it just turned into something that was a little bit more commercialized, certainly from the record label's point of view. Let me also throw in there about the backing harmonies that we've got going on here, because it's something that was just a given in the 60s and 70s to have guys that could back up the lead singer. And we've got that here with some great backing vocals. It's another thing that is low in the mix compared to the record. Again, they've pushed those up front, but you can tell that these guys can harmonize with each other. Just to mention Eric Faulkner and Stuart Woody Wood on guitars in this performance. Something that's really important to bring up about performances like this from the 70s and bands that were as big as Bay City Rollers, the record label would have been saying to them, entertain, put on a show, and that's what they would do naturally as well when the adrenaline kicks in, and especially when there is a young audience who is so into the band. The audience don't want to see five guys looking at their fretboard, or a drummer with his head down and a singer who's addressing the floor, singing, looking directly down. They want entertainment. They want to be involved with the performance. And sometimes a little bit of the technical side of live performance gets put to the side for that entertainment and the value to give to the audience. It is a massive part of live performances, putting on a show, entertaining your audience, because they can listen to a record whenever they want to, but they can't come and see the band live in person every night of the week. It is very much a rare situation for them to be able to see the band live, so they want to be entertained. And that's exactly what we get here from Bay City Rollers. I'm not going to have a chance to get into the background behind the band, the history. Maybe I can do that in the future, because this has been a bit of a technical breakdown of live performances in general, so it has gone on a little bit. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Rock!